All right, the past couple of days, Doc Thompson has been talking about what's happening. Oh, by the way, yesterday in Columbus, have you heard any of the video and any of the audio from Columbus yesterday and the protests? A couple of thousand people at Broad and High in C-Bus, and this is all about that Senate Bill 5 and the collective bargaining and the state employees are going, and public employees, I should say, are going apoplectic about this, that this is union busting. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I will also add, we need it. We need the unions to be busted. The state's broke $8 billion. And to that point, Doc was making the point the past couple of days that that the topic is all about, or the union's point of view is all about the survival and the retaining of power of unions. And to that point, he is correct. However, I think that Doc failed to put, as Willie would say, the cheese on the cracker in regards to this, because he really didn't get into the dollars and cents of the way taxpayers in the state of Ohio and taxpayers in Wisconsin, and this also may occur in Indiana and also other states around the country, but those are the big three right now. Taxpayers are being fleeced by people that may be employed in the public sector, so to speak. If you've listened to me on my Saturday show, you may have heard me talk about how years ago, if you worked in the public sector, your pay was low, but you made it back on the benefits and the retirement plan after you retire. And in the private sector, your current pay was higher than the public sector, but the whole retirement and the benefits not as good as the public sector. You following along with me? I'm trying to make this simple. Well, what's happened over the years, and I will explain when this all happened, because it happened in 1973. I'll give you a little history lesson in a little bit here. But in 1973 is when it took place. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm also going to give you some facts and figures in the state of Ohio as far as the pay for a public employee v. a private employee. We'll do that in a second. Got this email here yesterday, and it's from a guy named Alan, and Alan works over at UC. And he says, I've been a long-time listener of WLW, and so have many of my friends. We find ourselves listening to WLW a lot less these days due to the one-sided viewpoints. They, meaning some of the talk show hosts here, including Doc Tommy, throw out statistics about overpaid government workers, yet they never cite legitimate sources of information. Alan, if you're listening, stand by, because they're coming. I've been upset at the agenda of these hosts, at their constant bashing of lazy and overpaid government employees. Government workers are easy targets. People notice a road worker standing around doing nothing. What they do not see is the hour of back-breaking work he just completed. Try using a jackhammer for 15 minutes and see if you want to criticize road crews anymore. My friend worked in road repair for many years, and his back is in bad shape. Recently, they talk about reducing state employee pay. Who is going to want to risk their lives as a police officer for $30,000 a year in reduced benefits? I'm going to insert something here. I guess Alan didn't read the newspaper, the Cincinnati Enquirer, this past Sunday, but I digress. Are they going to apply for these types of jobs? This is great. My worst nightmare would be Doc Thompson showing up as a fireman at my house. My parents had a small fire incident a few years ago. We were happy to see the firemen show up. I also find them to be very one-sided on issues and rude to callers that call in to disagree. At least Bill Cunningham will be polite and listen to both sides. That pause was for effect. Here are some facts and observations. I guess this guy worked in both the private and the public sector. I paid into Social Security for 17 years. I would be entitled to about $800 a month around the age of 65, give or take a few bucks. Unfortunately, because I will receive a state pension, I will only be eligible for about 20% of my $200 for my Social Security payment. This is a unique rule for the pampered state employees. Alan, you're getting the state pension. After 30 years, I will receive a pension of 66% of my pay and reduced benefits. See what some private industry workers' pensions look like after 30 years. I know what a couple of GE retirees are making. Do not get me wrong, they worked hard and earned it. Here we go. There are several teachers in my extended family. I notice that whenever I am around them, they always have a pile or papers they are grading. This is in the evenings. Why do teachers always use that excuse? Like, I don't take work at home and do it? Believe me, I do. Like, I didn't return emails last night about 10:30 last night? Hello? Like, I didn't return emails this morning about 5:15? I continue. I think that they would find most families have a government worker in the family and do not agree with these hosts. Yet they pamper the callers to show that they do the usual stereotypical bashing of the government employees. I would love to see them do road work or sort and this guy works at UC, or sort and deliver mail for a month and then see how they feel. The post office needs to have changes, but they still work very hard. With the proposal to rig collective bargaining for unions, these three hosts have really been pushing this matter while insulting the unions. I'll conclude here. I know ratings are probably good right now, but if they keep insulting the working class, you will find in the long run people will quit listening. I love WLW, but I'm not ready to reach. But I'm already reaching the point of listening to other stations. Thank you, Alan, who works at UC. In minutes, I will pass along, since he says we never document, I will pass along the truth of what public employees make as opposed to those working in the private sector. I'm Darrell Parks in for Doc Thompson on 700 WLW. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast. Meteorologist Frank Marzullo says today, another mild day. It's going to be cloudy, maybe a passing shower as well. High today at 62. Tonight, clear skies and cooler. And a low of 32 for tomorrow. Sun and cloud mix with a high of 50. Sunday's high at 60. However, Tuesday a high in the, I hate to tell you, in the 30s. 56. 700 WLW. All right. Here's where we're going to hit some folks with reality. According to the email from Alan, we never document the difference between public employees and private employees. This data, look it up, from the Buckeye Institute. Just look up buckeyeinstitute.org and do a search on the site for a paper written, "The Grand Bargain is Still Dead." A fellow named Matt Mayer wrote it, and it was published on December 31st, 2010. 30 years of service. You ready? A state employee in the state of Ohio, wages for 30 years will be $1,899,000. 30 years of service for a private employee in the state of Ohio, $1,232,000 for a difference of $667,000. Retirement, 30 years of service, state employee gets $266,000. Private employee, $49,000 for a difference of $217,000. To Alan's point with Social Security, state employee, $0. Private employee, $94,000. Health, $685,000 in health benefits for a state employee. For a private employee, $584,000 for a difference of $101,000. Sick pay. State employee, $82,000. Private employee, $16,000 for a difference of $66,000. So let's do the grand total here. You ready? If you're a state employee with 30 years of service, you're forecast to make $2,932,000. If you're a private employee working 30 years, your pay $1,975,000. A difference of $957,000. Now, if you're a government employee and a public employee, no matter where it is, in a city, in a county or the state, or a federal employee, and you hear numbers like this, and you still can't conceive why taxpayers are upset and PO'd, you're delusional. This is what has happened over the past, 30, almost 40 years. Since the early 1970s. A federal government employee today makes $109,000 on average annually. Yes. And what's the household income in America? Just shy of $50,000? The whole system is messed up. Let's bring this home, shall we? Butler County, Ohio. Private sector employee in Butler County, Ohio, on average makes $39,231. A state or local government employee living in Butler County makes $42,026. Federal government employee in Butler County makes $53,641. Average teacher salary, and I mean Lakota, $62,331. $9 on the big one. It's news time. The latest on the latest interstate execution, or dare we call it the first crosstown shootout of spring. Coming up on the big one, 700 WLW. 10:06 this morning, Nathan Bacharach of Simply Money will be joining us talking about inflation. I found it interesting. It was buried in the news. You know what the annualized inflation rate is for 2011? You sitting down for this? Right now it stands at 9.6%. And no one in the media and the press is talking about that. Nathan will join us about increased food prices and clothing prices. And if you're out there shopping for a new maybe washer or dryer, April 1st, the prices of those appliances are going to be going up. We'll get the insight there. 10:33 this morning. Our good friend from Coast, Chris Finney, will join us. I have a question, a very simple question that's not being talked about. Remember about a year ago, the Cincinnati City Council fell over themselves to spend the casino revenue like it was cash money? And they divvied that up. Remember that? Well, now that the casino revenue is, how shall I say it? When they sold the casinos, how shall I won't use that word. It was overstated. How is the city of Cincinnati going to pay for the operation of the streetcar? Simple question. Since a lot of that money was going to go for the operational expenses there. Yeah, the streetcar no one's going to ride. But I digress. Interesting with all the emails piling in now. I can see where this really strikes a chord. Look, I don't want to see anyone. I really don't want to see anyone lose out. I firmly, and if you've listened to me over the years, you have heard me say that, for instance, with the automobile manufacturers, the management of those companies, they all ought to be put in jail. I think the board of directors of the old General Motors ought to be doing jail time for what they did to that company. They were on the other side of the table from the union, and they were agreeing to those contracts. Same thing in the public sector. There are people that we elect to office to be responsible with our tax dollars. And on every level of government, from the city all the way up to Washington, all they're doing is stealing is a rough word, but stealing. And they're not being responsible. I mean, there's a word for it. It's called malfeasance. They are agreeing to these contracts. Yeah, union members are sitting on the other side of the table, and okay. Yeah, we have 2 stadiums on the riverfront right now that we can't afford in Hamilton County. Why? Because on one side of the table was Mike Brown and the ownership of the Reds at the time. The other side was a current employee of Mike Brown, and yeah. But anyway, I digress. I mean, but it was just a bad deal. And the politicians knew it was a bad deal when they knew they weren't going to be in office when the check came due. We can no longer afford pay such as this. People have to start dealing in reality. And stop with the subjective and the emotional excuses like teachers. Well, when I go over their house, they're almost every time they're grading papers. Please, come on. In Fairfield, here's Keith, 700 WLW.
You know, I'm one of those people who always like to look at the origins of things, why things come about. You know, there was a time when unions were truly necessary because people were abusive to their workers. Remember when we had to pass laws to prevent children, even very young children, being put to work in factories, people being forced to work behind locked doors, the fire that killed all those people, you know, because they were trapped inside the building. So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves that everybody wants something, and they want it for as little as they have to put out, and then there are people who are greedy or excessive, and they want more than they should have. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any problem with having people have the right to be able to be protected from abuses or to say what's fair and equitable. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me that if you expect your employees to produce good work, that you starve them to death. I mean, that was a joke even in a fictional show.
No, that's not a joke, though, Keith.
Yeah.
I remember talking to an old-timer. I grew up in a steel town that no longer exists. And at the time, the steel plant, it was a Bethlehem steel town. And at the time, everyone, all my, everyone in the family, all my neighbors, my friends in school, their dads all worked at, as it was called, the plant.
Right.
And I remember a number of years after the plant closed up, I was talking to a fella that he probably was in his late 70s, maybe early 80s. And he was talking about back in the 1930s and working at the steel mills. And he said, you know how it was? And I said, how? He said, maybe it took $40 a week for your family to live. The steel plant paid you $35. And he said they kept you hungry, and we all depended upon each other in those neighborhoods. All those families. So it was, to your point, keeping people hungry and keeping people aggressive.
And then there's such a point is then you starve them to death that they can't do anything. I mean, so what I'm trying to say is this. What happened is that unions, like anything else, became corrupt. That those at the top were no longer thinking about those that they were supposed to represent. It's one thing when you're one of the group, and so you know what you're talking about when you lay out the course of what's fair and equitable. But like everything else, everything becomes a bureaucracy, and then there are those chunks that float to the top, and they no longer represent, as you pointed out, reality. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a partnership. That's why I'm thinking, it's just in your best interest that if you are the owner of the company and you want people to do their best, then you do as well as you can for those people. But at the same time, they can't turn around and starve you and completely bankrupt your operation. There is a balance.
Now, Keith, you're a student of history, and here is a milestone, and I'm going to call it a tipping point that happened in 2009, 2 years ago. In 2009, the number of government workers, the number of public sector union members, which total 7.9 million, began outnumbering private sector union members. In 2009, the number 7.9 million public sector union members versus 7.4 million private sector union members. That is a recipe for fiscal and financial disaster. I'm Darrell Parks in for Doc Thompson today on the big one, 700 WLW. 700 WLW, Darryl Parks in for Doc Thompson. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9:06. Oh, by the way, friend me on Facebook. Lively discussions taking place this past week on the Cult of Widmer members. Also, lively discussion on this topic on public employees and the whole collective bargaining thing that's going on. If you head to the website and the blog, 700WLW.com, I do have an honest question for the Cult of Widmer members. Please go to the blog, and I want you to honestly answer. There is a question. It's not rhetorical. I want you to honestly answer. In fact, the creator of FreeRyanWidmer.com, who was on with Willie yesterday, just after noon, I'll bet he couldn't answer it either. I'll bet. 700WLW.com and head to the blog, Darryl Parks. Willie, not that Willie, writes in. He says, DP, I'm so tired of they are grading papers in the evening complaint. Like we don't work in the evening and answer voicemails while driving to work. I would like to propose an answer for this. Move all the in-service days for teachers during the school year to the summer. Yeah. All right. To Mason, here's Sharon, 700 WLW.
Hey, Darryl, how you doing?
Not bad, Sharon. You were up in Seabus yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me all about the crowds, because the audio sounded like it was coming from Egypt.
Let me tell you what, Darryl. These union people were rude and nasty. We were right there in the middle of them in the rotunda, and they were chanting "Kill the bill." We were chanting "Alive and Well, Bill 5." Mm-hmm. And but the funny part is that when we were outside, these people were chanting, "Tea baggers go home, tea baggers go home, tea baggers hate children," And
you see, to me, that's Sharon, that's offensive. Because let's get rid of it. Let's get past the politics. Let's get past the teabag party or the Tea Party, I should say. Let's get past Republican. Let's get past Democrat. This is about doing what's right. We have a state that is $8 billion in the hole. We are broke. We are all part of this. I live in Ohio. Sharon, you live in Mason. You live in Ohio. We are all responsible for this $8 billion shortfall, and we are all responsible for paying the bills.
Well, yeah, and then when I said to this one lady, and actually there's a video, and I'm going to try to get it to you and Doc, of this lady that when she said, tea baggers go home, she was like in front of my face, and I said, we are home. And she looked at me and she flipped me the bird.
She was just saying you're number one.
I'm telling you what, these people, and then I was trying to tell these people, like there was a lot of fire and police there yesterday, and they're using these people as pawns, the teachers and all that we hate all these people. And my one friend was in the restroom, and this one lady said, well, you're going to really like it when we let your house burn down.
Oh, Lord.
I'm like, oh, my gosh.
Sharon, this is what I want from government, and I've said this numerous times on my Saturday program. If my house is burning down, please come and put out the fire. If someone's breaking into my house and wants to shoot me in the back of the head, I want to call 911 and have the cops show up. And in the winter, plow my streets. Other than that, I'm good.
Exactly. And I was saying, and this one guy was telling to me, well, how much do you think firefighters worth? I said, as much as an employer can pay you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I think you should be probably on the top of the scale. I said, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what policemen do, but we can only pay you what we can afford.
Well, people are not basing their opinions in reality.
Right.
Here's the big issue, and this is what's bankrupting the country, is the fact that they just continue to print money. And they're diluting the dollar, which is causing the inflation. And the inflation rate, which I'm going to discuss coming up at 10:06, is at 9.6% annually right now. And people aren't realizing this. They may go to the store and they say, okay, the quart of milk is a little bit more, or the loaf of bread, or gasoline went up 30 cents a gallon overnight a couple of days ago. But that's what's happening here. The dollar is being devalued, and it's costing more and more money in foreign markets to pay for things.
Well, yeah, and I was talking to this one lady, and she was actually very sensible. She works for the city of Columbus, and she was telling me she's taken 20 furlough days, and she's given up and given up.
Well, so what? Like that hasn't happened in the private sector?
And that's what I told her. I said, let me tell you something. I said, I own a business, and I said I had to go and work in another place. I'm running 2 businesses to keep food on my table. I said everybody is suffering here. Everybody's got to take a hit to rescue this state and to rescue our country.
And to rescue our way of life. I love the state of Ohio. I love living here. Just a number of weeks ago, I was asked to move, and I said no. But not because I didn't want to move, because I love Ohio. And I love where I live, and I'm comfortable living in Anderson. And I know what is wrong in this state. To my point with Sharon, the federal government just continues to print money, and the government can do that. But when it comes to the state government, which is by definition insolvent, the state of Ohio or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Indiana, it cannot print money. There have to be cuts. There's only 2 ways to balance the budget. And I'm not even bringing in the real time bomb, which is unfunded pensions. That's where the real money is hidden. And that's where the real problem is. Come on, folks. We have to be realistic in what is going on here. Oh, by the way, the big battle happening in Wisconsin, where a number of the state lawmakers, Democrats, left the state house, and then they went into hiding yesterday because they didn't want to vote on the bill. They were found at a resort. They went to, believe it or not, and I know many of you think about traveling for a summer vacation to Rockford, Illinois. They were hanging out at the Best Western Clock Tower Resort. Now that's serious living. I'm Darrell Parks in for Doc Thompson on 700 WLW. Doc Thompson working too hard. He's off today. Darrell Parks filling in. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Darrell. I'm very, very upset listening to you. All you Republicans, you teabaggers.
Well, first of all, I'm not a Republican, but go ahead.
Well, I would call you a teabagger.
I'm not a teabagger either.
Well, all you want
I'm not 70 years old. Go ahead.
All you want to do is cut. What people don't, and they fail to realize, just like the people want to cut and don't want to go on with the streetcar project, which already is projected to have a $1.5 billion economic impact to the city. For every dollar spent,
what, in plywood concessions? Come on, Nick.
For every dollar invested, we're going to see a $3 return.
Plywood for the windows on the storefronts, but go ahead.
It takes money to make money. Just like the government jobs, people want to cut these jobs. What are these people going to do now?
Well, Nick, you're a TSA agent, so you're like a government employee, right?
Exactly.
But you're not a union member.
Well, we are trying to start.
You're trying, right?
Okay.
How, do you make $109,000 annually? That's the average salary of a government employee.
Well, I
and
make
benefits too.
30,000 right now. Now the problem
right.
is, and if we were unionized, which we should be, we'd probably go up to about 50, where we should probably be at. But the problem is, okay,
why? So you can feel my crotch?
The problem is, Darryl, and I'm going to explain to you in simple terms.
So you can look important looking at my driver's license when I go through security?
Darryl,
Nick.
Economy, we need to start a fire underneath the economy to get things moving, right? Now, it takes a spark to start a fire, correct? Government spending can be that spark. Okay, and when the government invests,
you say so.
We are investing when government spends money. Okay, now you can argue with me all day long that some of this is wasted. Okay, but it creates jobs. Okay, when these people have a job, okay, whether you want to cut school teachers, you could go on and on and on. But when we lay people
like
off,
in New York City, they want to lay off like 5,000 school teachers.
What do those people do now? They collect unemployment. Okay, they become a drag on society.
Work for TSA.
Well, I'm just saying to you, Darryl, that we need a spark.
Nick, do you realize that since your boy, your president there, Barack Obama, became president, $29,660 has been added to your household as far as government debt. I'm not including state and county and local. I'm just talking federal. You know how much you owe? You know how much you and Thad owe right now in national debt?
Darryl.
$125,475.18. You have that laying around in a cupboard?
Darryl,
in a drawer?
There is a thing, and it's known as good debt, okay? When you buy a home, I was supposed to be, you're investing in yourself.
I thought you were upside down in your mortgage.
Darryl, going to college is good debt, okay? Those are things that's called an investment.
Nick,
okay?
I thought you're upside down in your mortgage.
We are upside down. That is...
End of story. Thank you. This is the home of the Reds, 700 WLW. The union members are all lining up. Where's my music? Put it in there. This Doors song sucks. This is a Doors song. I don't know why Doc likes this. There we go. Doing some investigating during the news. The unfortunate incident overnight, about 2:20 this morning, where Desmond Jennings was executed. First interstate execution of the early spring of the 2011 season taking place. We found out in the investigation that he was just turning his life around, by the way. He had not one, but 13 unfortunate incidences with the local police. 13. Nathan Bacharach from 55 KRC Simply Money. Good morning.
How you doing, Darryl?
Nathan, I'm worried.
Yeah.
I'm worried. We keep seeing all these positive things, at least it's the way it's being spun as far as the economy. The unemployment rate, in fact, Gallup has come out now saying the unemployment rate is actually about 10%. It's not in the low 9% range as the government is saying. And also, and I'm wondering why this hasn't gotten more play. Last month, inflation went up, it was 0.8%. But no one did the math and multiplied that by 12, which gives us an annual inflation rate of 9.6%.
Well, the good news is it doesn't do that every month, okay? So that's the good news there. The other good news is that...
First of all, Nathan, you and I are going to make a plan right now. We're going to mark a date on the calendar, and I want you to remember that statement. Because in December, you and I are going to be talking about the annual inflation rate.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. The annual inflation rate is going to be low because the government cooks the books. I mean, you got to remember, for starters, that if you actually put food and energy into the cost of the consumer price index, which I might add is the index used to figure out how entitlements go up, like Social Security and other government benefits.
Nathan, excuse me for interrupting, but explain that statement about putting food and energy into that inflation index.
Well, I still don't get it, to be honest with you. We had a member of the Federal Reserve on Simply Money last night, and I'm not quite sure at the end of the day I quite understood what he was saying either, all right? But all I can tell you is that there's some reason that somebody smarter than me, and I think it's just the government saying, look, if we actually put food and energy in this CPI, we wouldn't be talking about Social Security lasting until 2030. We'd be talking about 2013. So, let's just take that out, and you cook the books, you come up with a nice number, and you sort of say, well, it all balances out. I mean, that's what the government officials tell you.
But my point is, if we're going to get right down to things that we need to live, is food and gasoline.
I think they're right up there, though I have not tried to eat fuel, even though it's now made, ethanol's got some corn in it. I still don't think it's going to be, my topping on my Grater's ice cream. But look, the other things have gone down in value, that in terms of their price, or they're not rising very much at all. And we are unable to raise prices as a manufacturer of a good. And so when you take a look at it, it does cost more to live, but we're adjusting as a nation to deal with it because there's nothing else you can do, is there?
Well, Nathan, I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, fine.
And you're a smart money guy. You're one of those fat cats,
right?
But
I'm getting a little slimmer every day.
Let me give you some categories.
Yeah,
shoes, clothes,
right?
Tires,
clothes. Now,
plastics. All have increased in January on the wholesale level.
Well, let me take you in a different direction, Darrell, maybe, and see if we can look at what's going to happen to prices in a slightly different manner. The rest of the world, prices are going up because the rest of the world has greater demand. They're able to handle it, however, because in the rest of the world, many economies are actually doing well. And so if the price of something goes up, but hey, you can walk in and get a raise, the socks cost a little more, big deal. What we're going to start seeing over here, and what really troubles me, is that we're going to get all the inflation without any of the economic growth. Give you an example. Cotton. Go buy your T-shirts now, folks, because by the middle of the summer, they're going to be up 15, 20, 25% because of the demand for cotton. That's because in the rest of the world, folks want new shirts.
Yeah, Fruit of the Loom T-shirts are going to go from like $12 a piece to $14 or $15.
And we got an authority right here in town, by the way. Get a hold of Gary Hyman over at Standard Textile, Darrell. He owns that joint. I think it's the largest private textile company in the world, based right here out of Cincinnati. He'll tell you what's going on with cotton, and I'm telling, and around the world, it's going to be a tough. Here's on the other hand a business trying to maintain itself in the face of rising prices. I imagine in other parts of the world, Standard Textile is probably still able to raise their prices. You try it here in the United States and see how far you get. So we're eventually going to get squeezed a lot.
All right, Nathan Bacharach of 55 KRC Simply Money. You bring up the fact that demand has increased in developing countries, i.e. China and in the Far East. And this is why, corn prices are going up, even though, you can drive up 71 toward Columbus now and not see any corn or beans being grown. But I digress. Let's talk about the devalued dollar. How is that affecting the inflation rate as well?
Well, actually, the devalued dollar is helping to keep our economy moving. Manufacturing as a sector is doing really, really well. Now, it's coming off the floor, but it's had its best quarter in a long, long time. You take a look across the country, manufacturing is coming back. That's because when the dollar collapses, our goods, if you had a $100,000 Caterpillar tractor and the dollar goes down by 30% in value, the guy in Europe who buys it is basically buying it for $70,000, not $100,000. That's a bargain. He says, hey, what the heck, I'll take two. So it's going to help our manufacturing sector. However,
but the problem with that is Caterpillar has plants overseas now.
Yeah,
Caterpillar does not make all their bulldozers and payloaders exclusively in Peoria, Illinois.
But I learned one thing from listening to politicians over the years, Darrell. When they tell you they're going to do something, and until you're able to stop them, they do it. And President Obama, when he got elected, said, "Hey, I'm going to double exports in the next 5 years." And if we keep it up, we're well on the way to doing that. The problem is, at the same time, if you look at the value of the dollar, it's falling through the floor, and that's how you do it. You devalue your currency, and then people will come in. And it's like, hey, it's like going to Walmart, and the everyday low prices are the end of the year clearance.
Now we're doing that as a country by printing more money. and selling debt. But that's what we're doing.
We're doing it by printing more money and taking ourselves in debt. Absolutely.
I did a show this past Saturday with an individual, and we were talking about the dollar being replaced as the global currency.
Yep.
What would happen to our economy if the dollar is replaced by the yen?
That wouldn't be pretty, but you know something? There's lots of things that keep me up at night. But did you ever notice every time the stuff hits the fan, what happens to the dollar? Where do people run when they want to be safe with their money and they don't know where else to put it? They come back to us. And you do have to remember, the dollar may not be what it used to be, but we still have the best army in the world. In fact, you want to solve our budget problems?
Oh, so you want us to go into these countries and kick some ass?
Well, no, actually, what I'd like to do is go in these countries and say, listen, fellas,
I thought you were a liberal. You're wonkish.
Hey, no, I'm saying we're keeping you safe, guys. And by the way, for keeping you safe, we just, like the mafia has been doing this for years in the streets of the Bronx. Hey, you want to be safe? That's fine. Pay up.
Our government's the mob.
It is. We're absolutely the mob. I mean, I'm tired of paying for democracies that other people aren't willing to pay for. Particularly with our lives and our treasure.
You know, I don't know if you've caught this, but toward the end of the NFL season in the playoffs, I've been watching the games on Fox,
right.
And they would make a comment about that the games are being seen in 175 countries on Armed Forces television.
Right.
And I looked at my wife one day and I said, I didn't know there were 175 countries on the planet.
I thought there were 160. So I mean, we must have some, like Guam is going to be counted or something.
But we have bases in 175 countries?
Really? You know, I think we ought to just say, listen, next year we're closing down shop. If you want us to stay, we'll be happy to pay to keep you safe. Otherwise, Attila the Hun's on the horizon. Good luck, fellas.
So Nathan Bacharach of 55 KRC Simply Money. You're feeling pretty good about the economy.
Actually, I've got guarded optimism. If you got Ed on the show with me, you might have counterpoint. like 60 Minutes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, right. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm not feeling great. And I posed a question last night to Dr. Levon Henry from the Cincinnati branch of the Federal Reserve here, a very interesting fellow. And I said, I kind of wonder when it is that this whole thing kind of falls apart. And so far, everybody seems to think that the House of Cards can keep going. And
but here's the House of Cards, Nathan. Right now, each household in America owes about $125,500. That's just in federal debt.
Yep.
Now I don't know about you, but I don't have $125,000 hanging out in the cupboard in my kitchen.
No. But you know something?
How can the economy grow out of this?
Well, you look at any American business today, they're carrying around some debt. The question is whether we can even afford to carry the debt that we've got. Now, we can certainly inflate our way out of it, and we can make that debt worth a lot less by inflating our dollars, and that may be one of the ways that we do it. And that's why the countries in the European Union...
Okay, so that's great. We can sell debt. What about the states?
The states. Yeah, well, the states have to live within their budgets, don't they? Yeah, we'll see that, and that's why you see Senate Bill 5 coming around, because all of a sudden, and I think maybe if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be when we all realize that the cows came home to roost, or the crows came home to roost, because all of a sudden we're realizing what all of the things that we have agreed to or done, whether we thought about it or not, whether it's public pensions, that we can't afford it.
All right, Nathan, I know you can't relate to this because you're a fat cat, but do you realize in Butler County, a private sector employee on average makes about $39,000?
Yeah.
And a federal government employee living in Butler County makes $53,600.
Oh, yeah.
And an average teacher makes $62,331.
Right.
How is that sustainable?
Well, I don't know that it is sustainable, but I'll tell you what's killing them. It's not even the salaries. What happens is, if you look, I remember years ago we started doing work with Cincinnati Millicron in its heyday. Mm-hmm. Guys would work 30 years in a factory, 35 years in a factory. They get a pension, $1,800 a month. 5 years from the time they retired, it's $1,800 a month. There was no cost of living ever in the private sector on a pension. Mm-hmm. Okay? Today, you get a public sector pension. The COLAs are what, we talk, why does the government mess around with CPI? Probably to do anything they can to try and reduce this incredible long-term liability, which only worked as long as we could continue to get 8, 10, 12% a year in our investments, and that day seems to be done. So the pensions are not sustainable with the COLAs, and that's where everybody's waking up and smelling the coffee.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I am. Absolutely.
You know, there are those that are predicting an economic disaster in 2011.
Well, they're not going to get it. I'm going to tell you something. What we have to do sometimes, and this.
Damn it! I just bought land in Montana.
I know, listen. I got to take back the roll of concertina wire that I've got, and Ed's still trying to show me how to make sure that when you open up a claymore mine to guard the perimeters is this side out. Okay, I understand that. But no, I actually I'm feeling pretty good about where we're headed. It's not going to be happy days here again, but here's the deal: the rest of the world is doing fabulous, and the thing that I think in 2011 everybody's got to keep track of is that the world is doing fine, and we might not be. So there's a disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street. We can talk about the ultimate disconnect was that they messed us up and nobody went to jail. We could talk about that.
No. One person went to jail.
Bernie.
Correct. Yeah, Nathan, got to run, buddy.
See you, man.
All right, Nathan Backrack, 55 KRC's Simply Money, heard each weeknight at 6:06 on 55 KRC. We'll check out the forecast, another warm one, but the cold weather resumes next week. I'm Darryl Parks in for Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. 19 Storm Tracker forecast from Frank Marzullo. Today, mild, cloudy, 62. The high tonight, clear skies, 32. Tomorrow, sun and cloud mix with a high of 50. Some morning sprinkles on Sunday, and then a sun and cloud mix with a high of 60. But we're back into the 30s by midweek. 56, 700 WLW. Marcia writes to D. Parks at 700WLW.com. She said, Darryl, I read your blog about Widmer. If anyone donates to this website, to use your phrase, they're stupid. I thought about it from the very start. He is guilty, and yes, I'm a female. So there you go. Yeah, head to the blog, 700WLW.com, and I do have a question for Cult of Widmer members on my blog. And I really want you to honestly answer the question regarding Ryan, who, by the way, today is in the Correctional Reception Center. Isn't that a nice phrase for going to the pokey? The Correctional Reception Center. I wonder if you get, along with the haircut he got, I wonder if you get a fruit basket. Just thinking. And to the home of the Ryan Widmer trial, Lebanon, here's Paul, 700 WLW.
Hey, Darryl, how are you?
Good, Paul. What's going on?
Hey, we're in this very extreme opinions, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or anything else. And I think what we're seeing in Wisconsin is the beginning of a economic war, not a race war, but the haves and have-not war.
Mm-hmm. You're
my
right.
My question to you is, somewhere in this madness, and even the old Huckabee boy at one time talked about a flat tax, and he ran away from that like it was hot coals. Why won't that work, and what's your take on that?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of history.
Sales tax.
All right, I'll give you a little bit of history here, Paul. Right. But first of all, you know who's scared to death in the state of Wisconsin and Madison? Which, by the way, the AFSCME union, that's where the AFSCME union was created back in the 30s.
Correct.
Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin is the beginning of the unionization of America, right?
Government employees union.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
But you know who's scared to death in Madison and also in Columbus? It's the politicians. All of a sudden, people are passionate. They normally do work, and they normally pass laws, and they supposedly do all these things to benefit us, and people don't give a damn. But they're giving a damn now because people know the end is coming, and everyone could see it, that government is living beyond its means. To your point, I'll tell you why a flat tax will never happen. 1973. Ever hear of a case called Lenhausen versus Lakeshore Auto Parts?
I can't say that I did, but
that was the case. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0, and that was the case that allowed states to tax people in different levels according to income. All right, which is the whole equal protection under the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
All right. So at that point, what ended up happening was if you made over $100,000, you were taxed at a different rate than someone that was making $20,000.
Okay.
And then economic classes were created. And that is the basis of everything that's happening here.
Okay.
It happened back in the early 1970s.
But we're not in the 1970s anymore.
Right, but it's never been changed.
And it's time because because the haves are having less, and the
Right.
people who have everything are getting more, and we are in for some nasty times because people are starting to get angry, and with what happened in Egypt, people are starting to think, you know what,
Right.
it's time to get like back in the 60s. Let's have a good old demonstration here.
Yeah, Paul. Back to my point on the different levels of taxing. So how is state government? How is the state going to make up after that decision? Going to make up for the shortfall in revenues coming from, let's say, the middle class or lower income class? How are they going to do that?
Well, I'll tell you, the hole that has been dug is so deep.
That's the problem.
I'm not sure.
All right. Well, I hate to be Eric Dieters about it, Paul, but there's a little history lesson for you there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That was very informative. Thank you.
All right. 39% of all state government workers today, by the way, belong to a union.